Disclaimer, as this is a preview, all things shown in this video are still subject to change. Hello everybody and welcome back to another ship review episode, and today I'm going to be reviewing this beautiful US Tier 7 premium carrier, the Saipan. So, without much further hesitation, let's see how she is. In terms of survivability, the Saipan is very comparable to the other Tier 7 carriers. She's got 300 less HP than the fully upgraded Ranger, and 1000 HP less than the fully upgraded Hiryu. Where the Saipan is interesting when it comes to survivability is actually in her armor. The Saipan shares the same hull as a Baltimore class heavy cruiser, and she sort of inherits some of the armor protection there as well. If you look at her armor amount, she has a maximum of 152mm of Citadel armor, which is basically what the Baltimore has. And this is significantly more than what the Ranger or the Hiryu has. In fact, the Ranger only has something like 19mm of Citadel armor all around. It is therefore possible to hypothesize that in the event something gets close enough to shoot at you, that with the Saipan there's at least some sort of angling potential that you can minimize Citadel hits if people are shooting armor piercing at you. Aside from that, the Saipan is very comparable to the other Tier 7 carriers, with only the slight difference coming in her armor configuration. As of patch 0.5.4.1, the Saipan, while still in every other category identical to it was in 0.5.4, there has been one major change made to the flight control modules of the Saipan, which means the aircraft loadout has changed. So while in the other sections of this video you'll see the Saipan with its old 5.4 configuration, which was 2 fighters and 3 torpedo bomber squadrons, the 5.4.1 changes are going to make the Saipan a little bit different than it used to be. So first up, it's the air supremacy module, and this is going to give the Saipan 3 fighter squadrons and 1 dive bomber squadron. The fighters on the Saipan are excellent. They're the Tier 9 F4Us, and these fighters are amazing. First things first, they're incredibly fast. They go 178 knots, which means that you're going to be able to pick and choose your engagements, and the other Tier 7 fighters are not going to be able to catch you down. And that pretty much means you can dictate the air engagement as long as you're paying attention to your fighters. Now, the F4Us, they only have 3 planes per squadron. That's one of the things about the Saipan. Generally speaking, there's only 3 planes per squadron, which means that the fighters, if you let them get locked down against a Ranger or against 2 Hiryu fighters, you're going to lose. However, if you are able to use sort of hit and run tactics with the strafe, just go in, quick strafe, and then exit, you should be able to do very well with the Saipan's fighters. The other thing about the Saipans in the 3 fighter 1 dive bombers configuration is actually the dive bombers, which are actually quite interesting. The dive bombers, they are Tier 9 dive bombers. They go 155 knots, which is also really fast. They're only a touch bit slower than the fighters at Tier 7. The survivability is excellent. There's 8 aircraft per squadron. This is the most aircraft per squadron in the game, and with air supremacy there is 9 dive bombers. And these 9 dive bombers at Tier 7 are going to be packing 1,000-pound bombs. At Tier 7, this dive bomber squadron is absolutely going to hurt stuff. The other flight control module that the Saipan can equip is a little bit more similar to what it had in 0.5.4, and that is the ability to have 2 fighters and to have 2 torpedo bomber squadrons. These torpedo bomber squadrons, the fighters are the same by the way, the torpedo bomber squadrons have only 3 planes per squadron, but they do have many of the same characteristics as the dive bombers. They're incredibly fast, they go 155 knots, they're very durable, with a stock survivability of 1,960, and they carry the very good USN airdrop torpedoes, which do 9,867 damage. There are, however, only 2 squadrons for the torpedo bombers, and while that isn't as big of an alpha damage as the 3 torpedo bomber squadrons, it's still going to be alright, and there's a reason for that. It's because, one, the Saipan's planes rearm incredibly fast, and second, the planes themselves are incredibly fast. So with the speed, you're able to get your planes to target quickly, bomb, and then once your ordnance has been spent, your planes return incredibly fast. They're going to land, rearm, and you can send them out again. With only 2 torpedo bomber squadrons, you actually spend less time waiting for your planes to all launch and to group them together, because you're able to get 2 squadrons up quickly and send them on their way and then bring them back. Just remember, when you're playing the Saipan, the ability to maximize the effectiveness of the plane's speed and its rearm times is going to determine whether or not you're going to be a very successful Saipan player or just an average one. In terms of AA defense, the Saipan has reasonable AA. Its AA is not amazing, but it's decent. She's got a good number of 40mm Bofors, and they do pretty solid damage. However, the Saipan, if you're going to count on its AA to protect you against enemy planes, that's not really going to happen. The Saipan's main defense is going to be its great fighters, and because its fighters are really fast and you can zip around the map, you should be able to maintain a certain degree of map control with the Saipan's aircraft. The Saipan itself is actually a pretty fast zippy ship. Her maximum speed is 33 knots. Her turn radius is actually decent at 920 meters, which is less than the Ranger and the Hiryu. Her rudder shift time is a bit sluggish at 15.9 seconds stock without the module, but again, if you throw on the module, it does drop down to something a little bit more acceptable. Surface detectability, air detectability is all pretty standard for a carrier. She's got less detectability than the Ranger and a touch bit more than the Hiryu. Overall, everything else about the Saipan is pretty comparable. The big difference is the aircraft. In terms of recommended modules on the Saipan, I would definitely say get Air Groups Modification 1 for the improvement to your fighter's damage. That's a really big deal if you get locked down and you're engaging the other CV's fighters. It's also probably a good idea to get Air Groups Modification 2 and get that extra survivability on your fighters. Once again, you don't have a lot of fighters, so having extra survivability on them is going to make them harder to shoot down, and it's going to allow you to keep their fighters engaged for a longer period of time. In terms of the other modules, I would just say get Damage Control System Modification 1, just to reduce the risk of fires, as that is something that is a very big problem if you ever do get set on fire in a carrier. And of course, get Steering Gears Modification 2 to bring that rudder shift time down a little bit more to about 12.8 seconds, which is much more respectable. In terms of the commander, I would recommend that you start off with Situational Awareness. That is a skill that I really like. Although, if you don't want to get Situational Awareness, you can always opt for Expert Rear Gunner as your very first skill. The second one, I would definitely recommend Torpedo Armament Expertise to speed up the servicing time of your torpedo bombers. On the third row, you can either opt for Torpedo Acceleration, which on the Saipan works really well, or you can always opt for something like, High Alert. Although personal preference for this particular ship is to go with Torpedo Acceleration, as the further away you can keep your planes from AA, the better, as because you don't have so many planes, you do want to keep them safe as much as possible. Fourth row, get Aircraft Servicing Expert to add survivability and also reduce servicing time. And of course, fifth skill, get Air Supremacy. Once the first 15 skills are down, you can opt for additional first row skills, although you can also opt for things like Incoming Fire Alert or Fire Prevention to reduce chances of fire. And so that pretty much covers the Saipan from a port view. Let's see how she does in battle. Alright, so I'm still mostly going to focus on the 2-fighter, 2-torpedo bomber setup, because it is my personal opinion that this is still the best flight control module on the Saipan. I've tried the 3 fighters and the 1 dive bomber, and while the fighters are much better, having 3 of them in total, allowing you to establish air superiority against Rangers and Hiryus with no difficulty whatsoever, the problem with the dive bombers on the 301 setup is that while they are able to hit for damage, it is very inconsistent. I had one dive bombing run that I netted like 14,000 damage on Amagi. The next run, doing the exact same thing, hitting the exact same spot, I netted 5,000. And then the next one after that hit like 7,000. It was very inconsistent damage. Torpedo bombers I find to be much more consistent damage-wise, and you are able to accomplish much more consistent amounts of damage. The weakness, of course, with the 2 fighters is you're not able to achieve outright air superiority over other carriers. In this particular battle, I did get a bit lucky. The enemy Ranger was running a full strike setup, which was like, oh yay, okay, now I can pretty much do whatever I want, because my torpedo bombers are going to have no opposition. A lot of the battles I played in, I ran into Rangers that ran the 2 fighters and the 2 dive bombers, and while I was able to do better damage than them, the one thing I found is that against 2 Ranger fighters, it is still tough to try to take them down with 2 fighter squadrons that only have 4 planes each. One of the really big advantages I found on the Saipan was that if you're able to go fast enough and early enough, there's a good chance you could even get across to the enemy side of the map and get off the first bombing run without any real opposition, because the planes are so fast, they'll get to the other side of the map really, really quickly before the enemy really has the time to even react. And in this particular battle you saw, I went over there, nailed the Congo with 4 torpedoes, and did a pretty nice chunk of damage right off the bat, 24,000. And because my planes are really, really quick, by the time they've bombed, they're pretty much, in a very, very short period of time, about to be back on my carrier. And roughly around this time, my feeling is, okay, I haven't really seen any planes coming from the Ranger yet. Maybe this Ranger is running a full strike build. Maybe this Ranger is trying to hide planes down the border. So I'm starting to be a little bit more alert for potentially things. And then, of course, I spot one of the dive bombers and torpedo bomber, and I look over. I'm like, oh, okay, full strike. And it's right there in the open areas of the map, so I know where it is. I can go deal with it. So I send one fighter squadron over. And while I was heading over to deal with the bombers, I make sure to pass over B as well, so to spot the one destroyer that's in there as well. The enemy Ranger decides to go after our Atlanta, and he goes after him with all the dive bombers, and he goes after him with the torpedo bombers as well. Now, I should have gone and actually engaged the torpedo bombers, but it was really tempting to do the strafe. I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible person. I really should have protected my Atlanta, but it was just so tempting to try to strafe down all the dive bombers. And I do manage to bag, I think, all 17 of them. So I guess that was nice. But anyways, but now I know that the Ranger is in a full strike loadout. So what I'm going to do, of course, is that knowing that the Ranger is in a full strike loadout, I'm going to go and nail him. And the thing about the Saipan is that you can snipe other tier 7 carriers. However, it is also dependent on you hitting every single one of your torpedoes, or getting that lucky roll where you hit a chunk of the ship where there's no bulge armor and you do full damage on your torpedoes. And that's not a fully reliable way of doing things. I mean, there's going to be some things that don't really work. And in my particular case, I get over there, I actually find the Ranger alone, I do my drop, and I miss one torpedo. And you'll see, yeah, I was like, oh, I wish I was able to get that one extra torpedo hit. I would finish the Ranger off. And this is also the big reason why the Saipan went from 3 torpedo bombers down to 2, because with 2 torpedo bomber squadrons, you really have to have the skill to hit all of your torpedoes. With 3, you could miss a whole bunch of them, and it wouldn't matter because you could still hit the Ranger with like 6 or 7 torpedoes, and the ship would still go down in one pass. So it's the reason why the change was done, and it's a necessary change. Of course, here I come. I catch the Ranger. The Ranger knows he's in trouble because he's been caught in a position as a carrier where he has no ability to defend himself because no fighters. I get 5 very nice torpedo hits, and I leave him with 1,700 HP. Oh, that one torpedo that passed at the stern area, had that one hit, it would have been all over for him. All right, so while I am worrying about the Ranger and trying to get my torpedo bombers back now, I've also got one of my fighters over the Sims at Bravo. I know there was a Sims there, so I kept the fighter in that area to keep him spotted for my team. So none of my destroyers that are in that area capping are going to be surprised by an enemy destroyer showing up. I'm looking at the map and I'm like, oh, things are looking not that great positionally. On my side, the enemy team is pushing really, really hard down the 2 line, and we are somewhat outnumbered. So I'm already starting to head in the other direction because I'm a little bit concerned that if my team collapses and I'm still there, I'm going to get punished hard. Now, the enemy Ranger actually plays a little bit more intelligently with his bombers. In the next couple of tries when he comes to bomb, he actually sort of spreads his planes out a little bit more, and that makes it harder for me to actually barrage down his planes. Still, I do manage to catch a few of his squadrons, and by catching a few of his squadrons, I'm at least able to reduce the amount of damage he's able to output. I can't really catch all of his bombers if he's actually spreading them apart because I only have 2 fighter squadrons against 3 dive bomber squadrons. It's hard to deal with all of them. But still, I do manage to at least negate a substantial amount of damage on that strike to the point where the strike didn't really do all that much. Once again, I look at my mini-map and I'm seeing that the push that was coming down the 2 line, they're still coming. So I'm like, alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my bombers over there and I'm going to help my team out and try to kill off some of those ships. Instead of going for just going in there with torpedo bombers and hoping for raw alpha damage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stagger my squadron. So as quickly as I can get them out, I'm going to send them on the way, and I'm going to try to do individual drops on individual ships, and try to at least damage them so it becomes easier for my team to kill them. I don't necessarily have to get the kills, I just have to be able to help them stop the push. Now, first things first, I was thinking, okay, there's a full HP Königsberg, I'll go after the Königsberg, but we actually got some good torpedoes from a destroyer, so Königsberg died. So next target would be the Kirov, and the Kirov is a very easy target because it doesn't turn. It's not a very maneuverable ship, and it makes for a very, very easy torpedo target. So torpedoes away on the Kirov, and I don't have to worry about them. I'm just taking another torpedo bomber squadron, focusing on something else. I see the Congo and the Omaha, and the bigger threat is the Congo. However, the Omaha can burn things, especially other battleships like the one that's on my team that's being shot at. So what I do is I do a bit of a fake. And initially it looked like I'm setting up for a run on the Congo, and then what I do is I've actually set up for the run on the Omaha. And of course, the Omaha, which was not really expecting that strike, while the Congo was, eats one of the torpedoes and loses about half his health. Once again, while the bombers are coming back, I'm sending out more fighters, and what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to keep another one of our battleships alive. There is a Congo right now at around F5, and I'm going to try my best to protect him. I see the little destroyer pop up on my mini-map, so that's why you see me turning the carrier around and trying to head the other direction, because destroyers up close to a carrier, it's not really a lot of fun, even one that's based on a cruiser hull. Even though I do have some armor, it's not perfect. So I get off a strafe. It's not perfect. I do manage to disrupt that torpedo bomber's first strike. I immediately bring my fighters around and then execute a second strafe, and on the second strafe I bag a few more torpedo bombers. I didn't kill off the whole squadron even though I used 2 strafes, but I did my job. I disrupted that strike to the point where the CV felt rushed the drop, and also gave the Congo on my team that extra bit of time to defend himself, and basically ended up taking no torpedoes at all. So while the enemy Ranger is trying to recover the planes, I've got another squadron of torpedo bombers heading for that Congo from earlier, the one that I didn't bomb. And that Congo only has roughly, I think 11 or 12,000 HP, and one torpedo bomber would basically take care of it. That Congo does take a few more shots, dropping his HP even further to about 7,000. So this is going to be a very easy kill, basically securing the kill. Send in the torpedo bomber, one nice drop, and that's taken care of, and I don't have to really worry about it. So I just double check to make sure that the torpedoes did drop in the arm properly. There we go, got the Congo. Right now though, my team in terms of ship numbers, huge disadvantage. If you actually look at the numbers of ships we have, we're at a huge disadvantage right now. Enemy Omaha, the one that I bombed earlier, I go in to finish him off, set the proper lead, drop the torpedoes, and of course with the torpedo acceleration skill, these torpedoes do actually have some pace to them. Get that Omaha with the torpedoes, and there we go, picked up another kill. So everything on this side, on the 2 line that pushed down, is gone now. The only little problem I've got is that the enemy team's Kamikaze R is right on my tail, and that's not much fun, namely because the Kamikaze actually is pretty fast, and it's got some pretty nice torpedoes, and while the Saipan is fast in a straight line race, I'm not outrunning the Kamikaze. So here I really needed my team to come support me, and since there's so few of us left, I think it was important for all of us to really try to support each other, and I actually get some amazing support in this battle, by the way. I mean, the 3 of us, the 3 remaining people on the team here, we hard carry this team, and you'll see in a second here. One of the other reasons I actually like the torpedo bombers over the dive bombers is actually in situations like this. When a destroyer gets close to you, you really just want to be able to get aircraft in the air and just have things attack the destroyer as quickly as possible. The dive bombers, sometimes what happens is you recover them and they take forever to rearm, and so you're sitting there, you can be just twiddling your thumbs while the destroyer is just shooting you to death with HE and burning you and preventing you from really launching or recovering planes. So the fact that the torpedo bombers rearm really quickly is a definite advantage for this particular setup, because you're able to get these planes back, rearm them, get them back out, and attack things again. I was about to use the second torpedo bomber squadron on the Kamikaze, but the Kamikaze took a pretty big hit there and dropped down to about 1200 HP, and I'm like, guess I could just leave him for the other destroyer. I don't have to expend this torpedo bomber squadron and maybe save it to do something else. I'm looking at the map and I'm like, we're still down on ships. They still have a cap advantage on us. We have to try to sink as many of them as possible, and if I can save a squadron, I'll save it. So looking at the map here, remember that thing about keeping the battleship alive? Really, really important, because let's say here I'm going to try to bomb a Pensacola. Sure, I might be able to get the torpedo to kill him, but I'm wasting the entire strike on him, and the Pensacola can pop defensive A fire and kind of make my day a little bit more miserable. But a battleship can kill off a 1700 HP Pensacola in, like, one salvo like that, and it's done, it's taken care of, so I can go worry about something else. Enemy York there, 13,000 HP left, which is enough to at least take a torpedo to. So I'm just going to try to bomb this York and try to get his HP lower so he becomes an easy target, much like the Pensacola was. I don't come in at the perfect angle. The York does turn in. His kind of fighter scout catches up to me a little bit. So it wasn't perfect, but I managed to land one torpedo hit, dropping the York's HP down to about 4,000. And now, with 4,000 HP, that York is going to become a very easy target for the battleship. While I was dealing with the York, I had the other torpedo bomber selected, and I clicked on the minimap to send that squadron north. And the reason I was sending it north is because I kept seeing bombers from, north coming down to bomb us. So I thought maybe the Ranger's hiding up there. Ranger actually was a bit tricky here, actually was hiding somewhere else, but at the time I didn't actually pick it out right away. And then, of course, I had another problem, which is the Sims got in range to start shooting at me, and I'm like, oh, I gotta deal with this as well. So, take care of the Ranger's torpedo bomber squadron, make sure that no torpedoes came within range of bombing any of us, and then turned away to start running away from the destroyer. The Sims manages to set me on fire, and I sort of derped right here. I was trying to press 4 to check where my squadron was, and then accidentally pressed R. Derpy move there. Almost paid for that, because had the Sims set me on fire a second time, I would have had to pay for that with a whole bunch of additional damage and not being able to get my planes out. But I got lucky. The Sims only had 31 HP, which made him a very easy target for the ships on my team, and so they were able to take care of the Sims. Now I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, I know the Ranger has really low HP. I don't know where that Ranger is though. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my fighter across the map to go look for him, and then I'm going to try to wither the HP down on this New Mexico. I'm going to try to do everything I can, whether it's flooding or just torpedo damage. I'm going to try to chip away at the HP, lower the HP of the New Mexico to something a little bit more reasonable, so in the event that our Congo has to fight him, the Congo at least has a more even fight, shall we say. So I'm looking at the map and I see that the Congo is getting bombed. Now I can't get my fighters down there fast enough, so what I'm thinking is, okay, so since I can't get my fighters there, what I'll do is I know the general direction of where the planes are returning back to, so I have a feeling about where the Ranger might be. So I've got one of my fighters tracking into the direction to try to scout him out to see where he is. By this point in time, the enemy have all 3 caps, so it's starting to get desperate. However, because we've sunk so many of their ships, we do have the temporary points lead, which, as long as you have a points lead, you can get the caps back once they run out of ships. I get off another torpedo run on the New Mexico, and this one was actually a solid one. I do actually get a good number of torpedo hits here. 2 hits, get flooding, get high caliber, and the New Mexico now is a lot more vulnerable than it was at the beginning. Its HP has definitely been chipped away. With my torpedo bombers coming back, I temporarily focused on trying to prevent the Ranger from getting more attack aircraft in our direction by trying to engage as many of them at range. So the one fighter squadron I sent out earlier to scout out the Ranger, I managed to shoot that torpedo bomber, drop him to 1 torpedo bomber. It was a bit of an awkward strafe. I do manage to get clear skies, but now I know that I can handle that New Mexico. With that little amount of HP, I've got it. So definitely the priority now is to get caps back, to slow their point gain, and so they can't win on caps alone. The New Mexico actually dies to our Congo, which makes my life a little bit easier, as I don't have to worry about bombing the Congo, and I can just send my torpedo bombers straight at the enemy Ranger. Nothing to really worry about because the enemy Ranger has no fighter, so I'm basically going to be able to get in there unopposed by that Ranger. I'm going to speed the section up by about 2.5 times because these, all this is my bombers flying across the map really, really quickly and hitting the Ranger and sinking it. So speed it up. Yay, look, when they speed up, it's even faster. No, this is not really how fast you go, guys, just FYI. Anyways, eventually, I do get over to where the Ranger is. My fighters first, just because I do want to try to kill a few more of his bombers, and the other thing is I don't really want the Ranger to see my bombers and then start taking active attempts to dodge and protect himself. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking this fighter, I'm like, throw it in there, do a couple of strafes, keep his bombers busy, make him actively play with his aircraft, and then hopefully doesn't pay attention to my bombers. And I think only like right around here do you start to see the Ranger actually starting to turn, and this is roughly when he starts to pick up, oh crap, there's actually bombers coming in. And with the speed of the Saipan bombers, by this point in time it's too late. And so there we go. Torpedoes away. He does shoot down one of the planes, but on 1,700 HP, he's not really going to survive. Takes a torpedo, and there we go. I secure kill number 4. And so, in this battle, I manage high caliber, I manage clear skies, 21 torpedo hits, 40 planes shot down, 4 enemy ships sunk, 2,086 base experience, and total damage was about 135,000. Anyways, folks, I hope you have a pretty good understanding of what the Saipan is capable of. If you've got any questions, leave those in the comment section below. Aside from all that, you all have a good one, and I'll talk to all of you again soon.